Welcome. Today I'm talking about resilience. It's something that I thought I knew initially, and I learned over time more about it and a way that we can really use it to our advantage. And so for me, I grew up thinking I was really resilient because I managed to live through a lot of very challenging circumstances. I had a counselor once who said, your life was like a bunch of mini bombs, like a war zone going off all the time. And it's true. I had a lot of challenges. My mom was suicidal. The first time I remember her attempting suicide, I was 4. My dad was both a sexual and emotional abuser. He was a rageaholic. I feared for my life at certain times. There was times when I lived with other families, both with my mom and without my mom. At 15, I went into foster care, and it turned out to be really beneficial for me. I felt I finally had someone who cared, and I had a room of my own for the first time since I was 5, when I had my own room for about a year, and that was it. Most of the time, I had to sleep with my mom, especially when we lived with other families. And then I continued the pattern. Even though I studied psychology, counseling, conflict resolution, I married someone who had a similar energetic to my dad. On the outside, they looked very different. They weren't an alcoholic, not a smoker, very athletic, but that energetic emotional pattern was there. The emotions were shut down, the anger was shut down, so resentment built, and then there would be a blow up at 6 months or a year. It was like clockwork. And I finally left that marriage. It took a long time for me to feel confident that I could. And then 25 years ago, I had breast cancer. And that was a huge turning point for me. It was a point where I learned about my emotions, allowed them to come up, that Pandora's box that I'd shut down, and also that place of my spiritual connection that I had shut down because of the anger I had at religion and what I saw had happened to my parents. And I got to learn that I don't have to be religious. I can be spiritual and have that connection in the way that I wanted to have it. Again, finding that choice for myself. The problem is when we don't allow our feelings, we don't feel safe to feel our feelings, we get constricted, and then we can't really live our life fully. We're really living in that shut down state. And to allow that to come through really allowed me to see we can get through it. I think a lot of people have that fear. If I go into that depth, will I come out the other side? And yes, you will. I'm here to tell you that you will. And maybe you just need some support in doing that to allow that to come up. I was fortunate. I ended up doing it on my own for whatever reason. I was able to tap into that for myself. So let's redefine resilience in a way that empowers rather than exhausts. So resilience is different from just getting through the day. It's not this toughing it out, because when I initially thought I was resilient, I was mostly in survival mode and fear and numbing out, not dealing with it directly. And we all have our ways of numbing out. Sometimes it's eating, sometimes it's work, it's TV, it can be so many things. It can look like a positive or negative in our life, and it is a way, even being a helper in different helping professions, we need to be careful because sometimes that's a way of not dealing with our own feelings. So, true resilience is adapting and growing instead of living from that reactivity. So, asking yourself, instead of asking, how will I survive this? Reframe that to ask, how can I grow from this? And we need to learn to self regulate. We have different etheric bodies: mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, and then our physical body. And we need to tune into our body. It's not our enemy. We tend to blame it, judge it, shame it. I don't look the way that I want to look. I've added some weight that I don't like. I can't do the things that I used to do. And this is a big one for me, coming to terms with, because of physical challenges, not being able to do the same level of hiking, and how I get more tired with that than I used to. And building compassion and kindness for myself as I go through that. So learning to practice tips for ourselves before we're triggered. The studies show that as humans, we forget. Think about it. We have to remember to eat every day, shower, all these things. So it's the same with our personal growth and resilience. So we just need to get over ourselves and not be mean to ourselves and beating ourselves up with a stick. It's just like, okay, this is something I need to practice, and how can I bring that kindness for myself? We've heard about the breath, but instead of making it this big chore of, I need to do this box breath, I need to do this, I need to do that, just starting with the basics. Noticing my breath. What's happening with my breath right now? And just noticing our breath brings calm into our body. And instead of noticing the sticky spots and sticking there and breathing into it, breathing around it, letting our body know it has choice, that it can bring more air in to other parts of the body, and we can relax more when we do that. Noticing when our feet are on the floor. In that moment, where are my feet right now? Instead of a long ritual about grounding, and I do have other tools I use that are more advanced. But really, if we're in this triggered response, what do we need in the moment? Maybe you can't remember that in the moment, but these things will bring you to enough of a presence that you can then reach for those other tools that you may have. Another one, if you need even more, is hand on belly, hand on heart. And it just brings us really present when we do that. So neuroplasticity has shown us that we can learn anything at any age. We don't have an excuse anymore. So those rutted roads in our brain that we do things over and over again out of habit, we can change those if we choose. So the second thing is, emotions are part of the equation and not to be feared. And instead of sucking it up, we need to allow these feelings to come forward. Otherwise, they get stuck and become shadow and run in our unconscious mind. And this is where we create self-sabotage. And so I've learned through my Enneagram training and metaphysics how to integrate shadow parts of ourselves. Just like any part of ourself, it wants to be seen and heard. We have our inner child. And so the more that we can integrate those parts and acknowledge it, the more we're free to choose out of these places that are more adult. One for me was jealousy. Who wants to feel jealousy, especially with friends? I would see them doing things and that jealousy would come up. And going through a process, I learned to understand that it just helped me to see it was a desire. And that takes some of the charge off of it. And then I could feel and deal with any other feelings that came up. Emotions actually just take around 90 seconds to move through us if we don't stop them, to just let them run their course, and then they don't get stuck with us. And we didn't learn emotions, especially anger, fear, sadness. I know for myself, I was afraid I would hurt others with anger because of the rage that I saw. And think about it, road rage, these others displays of explosions of anger that have become rage. Often it's just telling us that a boundary's been crossed and that something's not okay with me. So what is that? And what do I have to do to speak up for myself or change the circumstances and choose differently? Somatic practices, if you've heard of fight or flight, animals use this to advantage of movement. After running adrenaline or whatever it is, there's movement to help it run through the body. And often we don't do that. I also trained in critical incident stress debriefing. That's a mouthful. And that was one of the things, to talk it out, to move to different ways that we can deal with stuff when it happens. Dance it out. Movement is great for that, right? This place of our brain is wired for music, and with music, there's movement. Put on your favorite song. I like to get clients to have a personal song and put it on and dance to it and move through it. Emotions are the key to our power. They're our North Star to show if we're in alignment or not. For our truth and autonomy, we've been taught to disregard it, so let's begin to embrace them and accept them. Resilient people acknowledge emotions and use them as a guide. Suppressing emotions weakens our resilience. So you can just begin by practicing noticing, spending quiet time with yourself, not pushing yourselves, making yourself do it and figuring it out, but being curious in the moment. What's going on with me right now? What's that feel like? What does it look like? What might it be? Sometimes a chart can be helpful. Is it like this or like that? Maybe there's another piece here. Often emotions can be mixed. So being okay with different ones that are present. So just acknowledging that and being curious and willing to go there is the beginning of working with our emotions. And the third one is knowing ourselves deeply is the best antidote to the chaos in the world around us. There's that myth, we just need to manage it better, get my day timer out, get things more organized, and that's going to make it all that much better. And we think it's all outside of ourselves, especially as women, right? We hear these messages from society, they get stuck in our unconscious, and we have these patterns that are created in childhood, and we carry these energetic patterns until we bring them into our conscious and release them. And unfortunately, in times of high stress, we revert back. Maybe I'm blurting out something that I didn't want to say because I've gotten back into that way of I'm under high stress and I just want to react. So practicing in those times of non-stress so we can reach rhythm faster when we're in times of stress. And we need to look inside first. The world will always be in some type of chaos. So that inner foundation is what keeps us stable. And, one of the things I had to learn for myself was home was here. Home was in my heart, within me. I used to say I had a hole in my heart, that I didn't feel complete. Now I know that that was a feeling that I hadn't addressed, that I felt alone, I felt abandoned, I felt hurt. I didn't feel seen and heard. There was so much to unravel there. And being able to understand the home is within me really brings me stability and peace. And after having had the cancer, learning the metaphysical meditational system I teach was learning energetic shields. And that was a huge, huge difference for me. Learning what was my energy and my feelings compared to someone else. It was a real shift for me. And I also learned two other dynamic tools for growth and change. One is the motivational map, which helps to bring the invisible visible, those internal and external challenges and conflicts and tensions. And the Enneagram, which is a psycho-spiritual tool. It shows us our reality strategies and our ego defense mechanisms and how to go beyond that to our true self. So really taking the time to know ourselves in this fast food society, learning to cultivate patience, be curious, and allow that deeper you to come forward. We're born with a certain temperament, and our culture and everything around us helps to show it in different ways for different people. We're all unique, though we have the same underlying needs. So we need three things. We need our one-on-one inner work with ourselves. We need that with another person, whether it's a coach, a counselor, a spiritual leader, a healer, whatever it is for you, because we're inside that picture frame. We have that reality view, we have the blind spots, and we need to open that up to other viewpoints. And that's something the Enneagram also helps with, to see those 9 different ways, main ways of looking at the world, and how we can use those to our benefit to use some of those other ways of looking at the world and bring in more understanding as well. And in community, groups, community, being witnessed, whether it's with yourself, with your spiritual part of yourself, your inner child, with another person, and in community. It's all very healing. And, this is one of the reasons that we have ceremony. So we build our capacity over time. Don't go beyond where you're ready. It's not one finish line. Personal growth is a lifelong process. That's just part of being human. There's always more layers of the onion, as one of my psychology professors said. So, some final thoughts. Resilience and growth are lifelong pursuits. We get to learn about ourselves every day. Knowing who we are keeps us grounded and firm in ourselves so we're not buffeted about by the world. Yes, we will get triggered, and when we deal with it in a healthy way, that is true resilience. So wishing you a beautiful day, and thank you for tuning in.